In Germany, there was the RAF, Rote Armee Fraktion, or Red Army Fraction, that existed from 1970 until 1998. And no one really knows who was actually behind. And that's why the excellent movie Das Phantom from the year 2000 was made, relating to the phantom powers behind the RAF, which I will only pronounce the German way in order to not be confused with the RAF, Royal Air Force. So in German you say RAF instead of RAF. It's almost the same anyway. So who is the phantom behind the RAF? It's very simple, really, and you should know it by now, having seen my other videos. What did the RAF do? Well, they attacked the state, both German and American, that are both a republic, and a republic is a horizontal rule. The state is horizontal. Therefore, it is quite logical to assume that the phantom behind the RAF was the vertical rule of Pharaoh's nobility in their internal war between the old feudal vertical rule of the empire and the new horizontal rule of the republic, because of which we had 2 world wars and a 3rd one coming up. Therefore, the name of the RAF was the Red Army Faction, as red is the color of the vertical rule of Pharaoh's perpetrators, or Red House, against the White House of the Republic, also called the Perhet of Upper Egypt and now in Washington, D.C. So on the right side, it says Deep State, of course, and you see the White House. And on the left side, you see Pharaoh with the white crown of the Perhet of Upper Egypt that was in the south. And the schism between Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt had nothing to do with religion and the creation of monotheism. It's all nonsense. Or they lie in history, or everything is a lie. It had only to do with the schism between how are we going to rule over the slaves, either in a vertical rule, as in Lower Egypt in the north, the original Egypt with one pharaoh, or are we going to rule in a horizontal rule, as in Upper Egypt in the south. And this is why they call it the White House. And this is why, on the other side, they call it the Red Army and the Red Army Faction. All these wars, and now the Third World War coming up, it's only about vertical versus horizontal and nothing else. And here, once more, the other picture. So on the left side, you see the Pharaoh of Lower Egypt, where Cairo is in the north, and you see he has a red crown. And it is his Red Army. You know, this is why they have the Red Cross of the Soviet Army, because the descendants of Pharaoh, they are there. And look at Russia today. It's a vertical rule dictatorship with one man at the head. There's nothing more horizontal. The Duma, the parliament, it doesn't even work anymore. And the same thing coming up with Donny in the US. And so in fact, the Red Army faction, it is his army faction, the guy to the left. And I tell you some more about it. And at a certain moment, as you know, the pharaohs, they put the two crowns together and they made the United Kingdom. Sounds familiar, the word? Yeah. Just like in England, the United Kingdom is because of the order of the Garter, they put like the horizontal and the vertical all together. This is why there's a House of Commons and the House of Lords. And it's the very same thing. And this is why England, I use the old word, I don't like this pharaonic stuff, so I don't say the United Kingdom, right? So England, this is why it is a constitutional monarchy. There's both a monarchy and a constitution. Constitution is horizontal, the monarchy is vertical. So this is how it works, people. Nothing has changed. And the dumb slaves, you know, it's like football, you know, one team against another team, you know. Oh, are you in the team America? Oh, no, I'm in team Russia. The dumb slaves. What are we going to do with them? For the RAF, the state they attacked was considered the deep state. Although 50 years ago, the expression deep state didn't exist yet. But for the phantom powers behind the RAF, it was about bringing back the vertical empire of Germany. Proven by the fact that in 1975 the RAF shot only one person in Stockholm when the German embassy was taken hostage. Why didn't they execute everyone and just that Baron von Meerbach? Well, because the vertical rule empire sees the von Meerbach dynasty as horizontal traitors to the vertical rule German empire. When yet another Count von Meerbach got murdered by the Red Terror 50 years earlier, when on July 6, 1918, the German ambassador, Count Wilhelm von Meerbach, was murdered by the jaywalker Yakov Blumkin of Lenin's Cheka of the Red Terror counter-revolutionary secret police. So, of course, this aggression by this jaywalker here on the German nobility von Meerbach became, of course, another additional reason to execute the whole catch on all the jaywalkers, which finally happened. So it was not the German people who were behind it, but they can't. The dumb slaves, they don't have the ability. They're not organized. They can't. They don't even understand this internal war. It was Pharaoh's nobility. So the Cheka with their red Templars V and the RAF with their red star killed a von Meerbach, and both times in a German embassy, which is way too much than just be a coincidence. And this is, in fact, a lead. So on the right side it says Cheka, and on top of the logo it says 1917 until 1922. But why is there a red Templars cross? Well, first of all, red is the vertical rule of the perpetrators, of Pharaoh's red crown and red house. But the Templars, which was in fact, and which is vertical. But then the Templars, as the Templars V here, the Templars are horizontal. They are the guys who wanted the principality, the princes wanted to rule. And they did the revolution, the French Revolution, and the Russian Revolution, and bringing a horizontal rule. So why does the Cheka has this horizontal? The Templars V were in fact they were killing revolutionaries, because in the beginning here the Red Terror brought by Lenin and the other guys, it was in fact a counter-revolution, you know, to bring back the nobility's vertical rule. But they had to pretend to be on the side of the revolution. So this is why they put the Templars V in it, you know, to pretend. It's all about deception and lies and all these sort of things, you know, in this internal war of Pharaoh's nobility. And the dumb slaves, they have absolutely no idea what they are dealing with. So they shouldn't, you know, be in this war or do these wars, because they will never understand. And the enemy within is far too intelligent for the dumb slaves to understand it all. So the best thing is not to engage in it at all. Don't do it. Just as Mr. Jesus said, you know, don't kill. Because he was part of it. He was of the house of David. He knew what was going on. This is why he said it. And so this is why. It's a bit contradictory, you know, to understand it all. And probably the Russian Revolution is one of the most difficult things to understand. And if you don't really understand it, you know, just don't engage into it. You must understand that the RAF thought to be left-wingers of the far left, who in fact got their orders, their guns, their money, their passports, their houses, and their cars from the right-wing vertical nobility. Just as Lenin was a vertical rule nobleman, using the left-wing movement as camouflage of his red terror. That was, in reality, a counter-revolution to bring back the vertical rule nobility. So in the image it says all nobility, the two guys here. And the two guys are Vladimir Lenin, which it says down below in the picture, and Felix Dzerzhinsky. Lenin was of the Russian nobility and Felix Dzerzhinsky of Polish nobility. And Dzerzhinsky, he was the head of the Cheka on the right side, which finally became the NKVD, and then it became the KGB, now it is the FSB, and they're still using almost the same logo with the sword in the middle and the whole oval thing in that logo. Only the Templars V, of course, disappeared, because the Templars V was only there as a camouflage to pretend to be revolutionaries. But as soon as that was over in 1922, they took away the Templars V because they didn't need to pretend anymore. They had all the power back, all vertical Pharaoh's nobility power back in the empire. So this is what actually happened. It was all about a counter-revolution. And this is the situation today in Russia. In the next episode, I'll tell you more about it, but this episode was actually about the RAF, but it's all related. And it's also always related to Switzerland, as Lenin spent 7 years in Switzerland. Then there was that SEAL train from Zurich, always Zurich, just like Adolf was in Zurich in 1923. It's always Zurich, it's always Switzerland, and it's always this internal war of Pharaoh's nobility. And Switzerland is Pharaoh's base. That's why Switzerland is always the common denominator in it. It's their neutral base. So here I'll show you that these so-called revolutionaries, who were in fact counter-revolutionaries of the nobility, that they're all of the nobility. So here's Mr. Lenin. I do it shortly because this video is actually about the RAF. Of course, there's a lot more to talk about this, which I do in the next episode. So he was promoted, Lenin was promoted to Director of Public Schools for the province and simultaneously attained the rank of State Councillor, which granted him the status of hereditary nobleman. So he was a hereditary nobleman. And you don't become just like that hereditary nobleman if you weren't of a noble house. It's not being done in the nobility. So here you can see what is a hereditary nobleman. Read it yourself. So here's Felix Dzerzhinsky, and here on top it says born to a Polish family of noble descent. You see, he even had a coat of arms here. Interesting, with the lion. And it says again, ethnically Polish parents of noble descent, and etc. They had problems with the Okhrana, which was the Tsar's secret police. So this is one of his reasons, to do this, to fight against the, to do this revolution, sort of, and counter-revolution, finally. So he was here it says, director of the Cheka. And this is Putin's dream, of course, today. the Cheka, because they became finally the KGB and all that. And this is why Russia today, it's like the same sort of terror state as in the times of the Cheka. So it's all nobility. And here's about Princess Evgenia Shakovskaya, and who became the, down below at the bottom it says she became the chief executioner for the Cheka in the Ukraine. So killing her own, you know, between the vertical and the horizontal rule. This is what it's all about. It says basically. So here's AI. I read it for you on top. The Bolshevik Cheka, the first Soviet secret police, was formed with a surprising concentration of aristocrats and nobility. This is the internal war. Despite their mandate to violently exterminate the upper classes during the Red Terror, the agency relied heavily on individuals from privileged backgrounds to build and enforce its power. So you see the high-profile nobles inside the Cheka: Felix Dzerzhinsky, Vyacheslav Menzinsky, and Princess Juni Shakovskaya. And here the demographic reality. Historians have analyzed the class backgrounds of early Chekists, revealing an organization that was actually top-heavy with elites. Within the top 20 ranking leaders, only a small fraction came from the working class or peasantry. The vast majority, around 60%, were from the bourgeoisie, intelligentsia, or wealthy landed gentry, the nobility. The nobility killing the nobility. And they try to engage the dumb slaves into it, who have no single clue what they're actually fighting for or doing the world war for, the coming world war, because this internal strife, this internal struggle of Pharaoh's nobility, it's still ongoing. Here it says Vladimir Lenin was registered as a hereditary nobleman. They call it dvoryanin. This status was not ancient, but achieved through his father Ilya Ulyanov. So, of the nobility. And here down it says the historical irony. Despite possessing hereditary noble status, Lenin despised the aristocracy and the Tsarist class system. His political ideology was built on overthrowing this exact structure in favor of a proletarian state. Well, he was, of course, pretending, you know, to be despising the aristocracy, because he had to. They had to get the people behind them, you know, to trust them in this counter-revolution, to bring back the nobility. And this is what happened. History is a lie, you know, they all lie. Politicians lie. And also Lenin, he was lying, pretending to be against the Tsarist class system, you know, so he could stab the revolutionaries in the back. So this is in fact a genuine picture of the German ambassador von Meerbach lying there in the German embassy in 1918. It's interesting nowadays how, you know, you put the English, or in this case the German words, into the Google translator. You get the translated into Russian, some keywords, and then you find in the Russian language internet, you find this sort of pictures that I suppose the German media never had, never been shown, not even the German authorities, I suppose, because if you punch it into German and do a search, you won't find this. So this is inside the official picture, inside the German embassy more than 100 years ago. So in this case, Pharaoh's nobility still acts like being in the Middle Age, where in this internal war, entire noble bloodlines were eliminated till the last woman and child. That in this very case of the Red Star exterminating the noble house of von Meerbach, 2 times the same Red Star assassinates a von Meerbach, and both times inside the German embassy. This is just too much to be a mere coincidence. I know that the RAF was ordered to kill Colonel Andreas Baron von Meerbach, which was in fact the goal of the Stockholm operation. In Demotic Pharaonic, Meerbach means a pyramid next to the water, as Meer relates to the Demotic Mer for pyramid, and Bach to hieroglyph N37 that I explained before in this video here, and furthermore explained in the next sequence. So in the part on the left-hand side, we see the beam standing for a pool or body of water. And if we go to the right-hand side, where the other hieroglyphs are, we see the beam, but the body of water under the bird. So that means it's a water bird. And if we go up from the bird, we see the snake with the body of water or the pool. So that means it's a water snake. So in fact, the German RAF was not a far left movement, but a far right movement, just as today's Russia, and has always been a far right vertical rule dictatorship. The terminology comes from the Order of the Garter and its parliament, where House of Commons are left and House of Lords are right, but both are occupied by members of Pharaoh's nobility. So here is the first Meerbach, Wilhelm von Meerbach. I read it for you here on top. He was a German diplomat. He was assassinated by left socialist revolutionaries while serving as the ambassador to Russia. Well, of course, they were not left socialist revolutionaries. Now we know what really happened. Although the jaywalker here, Yakov Blumkin, he was believing that, he was doing it for the left social, what was the name again? Left socialist revolutionaries. But it's just the internal war. And here we see, down here, coincidentally, they call it coincidentally, nice. a later relative, Andreas von Meerbach, would be murdered by the Red Army faction at the West German Embassy siege in Stockholm in 1975. So 2 times von Meerbach, 2 times in an embassy. Oh, you think that's a coincidence? Well, no, not really. Yeah, Andreas von Meerbach, there's the other one. And then again, 2 times killed by the Red Cross and 2 times killed by the so-called extreme left-wing socialists. But it was not about that. So it says here, Andreas Baron von Meerbach. He was a West German lieutenant colonel in the Bundeswehr. And there he was murdered by Red Army faction terrorists who were raiding the embassy during the West German embassy siege in Stockholm. We're all being fooled with this left-wing, right-wing nonsense. Also is the RAF's 5-pointed star, the logical 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sequence, follow-up, consequence of the horizontal concept of 3 and 4, of the horizontal 3 more sinners, like a reaction to the horizontal revolution leading to the Republic after the Russian principle, where Lenin's counter-revolutionaries unleashed the Red Terror on the Russian population. So let me explain that to you. So you see first in the picture on the left side, you see in the square there are 3 dots below. And in the compass there are 4 dots. But it's actually the other way around. I have no idea why they put it like this. Because the square has 4 corners, and it's a concept of 4. So I guess it's probably a bit difficult to put 4 in the square, 4 dots. Well, never mind. So this is what I meant. So it says in the left picture, the left-hand side picture, it says 3 and 4. And then the right side, because it's a 5-pointed star, it says 5. So it says here like 3, 4, 5. As on the left side, the 3 more sinners, they did the revolution. And as a reaction, which is 3 and 4 for the revolution, the concept of 3 and 4. So as a reaction to the revolution in Russia, there was the counter-revolution. So this is the follow-up number after 3 and 4. So there is a 5 to be found in the 5-pointed red star of the Soviets, the counter-revolution, to make it vertical again. So on the left-hand side is horizontal, the revolution. The princes, they all wanted to rule together, so that's horizontal in a parliament, in a republic. And then it became vertical again, number 5 on the right-hand side. And we got the Russian dictatorship and the vertical rule pharaohs ruling again. So before with the Tsars it was vertical, then for a very short moment the people, they thought they could make it horizontal and all rule together for a very short moment. And then the Swissies, they unleashed their Swiss agent Lenin in a SEAL train and to Russia. It's always SwiSSyland. With Adolf, with Lenin, they're all Swiss agents. And then it became vertical again with the 5-pointer star. So here we see, in fact, 3, 4, 5. Lenin was a dvorjanin, meaning a member of the nobility, taking back the vertical power, destroying the horizontal rule revolution of the people. More on this in the next video, because this video is on the German RAF and the other anarchist organization 2. Juni, the 2nd of June, that merged into the RAF. The 2. Juni have a similar logo as Hezbollah and Iran's Republican Guard called the Pasdaran, which is not a coincidence, as the RAF and 2. Juni teamed up with the Caliphate guys, who also are vertical rule advocates, as a caliphate is just another feudal system with a caliph Pharaoh at its head. Therefore, Russia and Iran are together as vertical states against the only real horizontal republic of the Middle East, being the JJ base of the jaywalkers. So in this picture here, we see on the left-hand side, it says Russia, which is quite recognizable with the red star. And on the right side, it says Iran, with almost the logo of the Shia Pasdaran and the Shia Hezbollah. But it also says, at the Russian side, it says the German RAF. And on the Iranian side, it also says the German 2. Juni, who were together actually. So the RAF, really, we know it represents Russia, it's in the name, the Red Army faction. And on the right side, the 2. Juni represents also Iran and the Caliphate guys. So there's always like a microcosmos and a macrocosmos, in small and in big. So in big, it's like Russia and Iran together, and in small, it's like the RAF and the 2. Juni together. And that's not a coincidence. The symbols don't lie, people. So coming back to the previous picture, you can all see that all these symbols, they are all the same. You know, there's an earth in it and an arm with a hand holding a rifle or an assault rifle. So there's a common denominator, and we can say the same persons behind the logos. And so which one was first? I've put the pictures here chronologically. So on the left-hand side is the German terror organization 2. Juni, the 2nd of June. I pronounced it in the German name because they were Germans. And they were founded in 1972. So they had their logo before the Iranian Pasdaran, which is the next picture in the middle in blue, which of course was founded in 1979. 7 years later, after the 2. Juni. Because before 1979, there wasn't even an Islamic State that was founded in 1979. And on the right side, there is the Hezbollah from Lebanon and Syria, founded in 1982. And of course, founded by the Iranians, or those who are like into these sort of things. Of course, not the entire people do. But maybe in these days they all were behind that sort of thing, you know. So, as you know, after the Second World War, the Pharaoh's vertical nobility, they couldn't find any more people who were willing to fight for Nazism. So they found themselves young people, brave young people, doing the wrong things, who thought they were fighting for left-wing valors, but they didn't. You know, it's the same Islamofascism, which already before the Second World War, when the Mufti of Jerusalem, Islam Amin al-Husseini, when he went visit Mr. Himmler and Adolf himself. You know, this is how the whole idea, like, they're all teaming up. So it's definitely the same thing. And it's, so the common denominator between these three similar, identical, I might say, symbols, with a hand, with a rifle, and the earth, like we are going to dominate the earth using the rifle, that's what it means, you know. And which is the vertical rule, Pharaoh's nobility. They are behind the left one, 2. Juni, in the middle, Pas daran, and of course to the right. Symbols don't lie, people. They tell the entire truth. It's quite sad, really, because the German boys and girls of the RAF and 2. Juni were very brave persons, believing to fight imperialism and for justice, whereas the orders and weapons they got were just by another set of imperialists of the vertical rule phantom behind the screen. This is why at the end of the Phantom movie, the German song "If I Were the King of Germany" is being played as a reminder to all the insiders. In German, the name of the song is "Wenn ich König von Deutschland wäre." Now, that can't be a coincidence, can it now? Because this is where it's all about, basically. So at the top left side, it says, "If I were the king of Germany," with the Pharaoh of the vertical rule, with the same 5-pointed red star at the right side. In the middle, it says in German, the official title of the song, "Wenn ich der König von Deutschland wäre." So here we can read about the 2nd of June movement, the 2. Juni, on top here. And here so we can see here they've got the same logo as Hezbollah and the Pas daran. And in blue it says here, in contrast to the Red Army faction, RAF, the 2nd June movement was anarchist rather than Marxist. So the RAF were Marxist and the other were anarchist. And the organization derived its name from the date that German university student Benno ohne Sarg, no picture, was shot by West Berlin police officer Karl-Heinz Kurras while participating in a protest, well, listen to this, against the Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, state visit to Germany. So the Shah of Iran visited Germany on June the 2nd, that's why the name, and then one of theirs, Benno Ohnesorg, he was murdered by the German police. So this is why they got the same logo, because both of them, the 2nd of June movement and the Pasdaran, the Islamic state of Iran, both of them were against the Shah of Iran. And we got here another connection. And one of the members of the Zweite Juni, his name was Fred Teufel, in the middle here. And interesting enough, the name Teufel, or the word Teufel, it means devil in German. But okay, that's a coincidence. That's not a lead. So here you can read about the things they did, and it's been said they were more brutal than the RAF actually. Here they see a lot of their members, anarchism in Germany. So it's not only the symbol they got in common with Iran, the Zweite Juni, but also the date and their fight against the Shah of Iran. So, but then it's a bit difficult to understand that the Shah of Iran, like a king, actually should be vertical. But, well, he had a parliament, so, you know, being like a constitutional monarchy, which is not really vertical. The vertical rule was like losing it. So under the cover of a religion like Islam, they brought the vertical rule back to Iran. And here about the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, called the Pasdaran, having the same logo as the German Zweite Juni, the 2nd of June organization. And of course, the Shah of Persia became more and more horizontal, and being in the beginning backed up by the biggest horizontal state in the world, that is America. Later on, he was then again attacked by America, which makes it very complicated. But anyway, the whole thing became very horizontal. And this is not really a thing that the vertical rule guys and the caliphate guys that they want to happen. So it's all about vertical against horizontal rule. The horizontal republic against the vertical rule feudal system, which is either by a king or either in a caliphate, a religious caliphate. It's all the same. So here the Hezbollah, and here the, in fact, German Zweite Juni logo. And here on top here, you can see Hezbollah was founded in 1982, as I've put in the collage just before. And also in the other websites, you can read that Zweite Juni was founded in 1972 and the Islamic Guard in 1979. Here you see the bombed Mercedes of Alfred Herrhausen in an attack that was way too sophisticated just to have been done by some left-wing hippies, sort of. And the name you see here, Herrhausen, can be translated into English as House of Lords. But it was more like the House of Commons. So the RAF assassinated Alfred Herrhausen, the chairman of the Deutsche Bank, on November 30th, 1989, because he decided to write off the collective debt of the Third World, which in fact was a very leftish thing to do, and therefore no reason whatsoever for the left-wing RAF to murder the man. Unless the phantom behind the RAF were right-wingers like the vertical rule, who saw all their former feudal wealth being traded for a one-world horizontal rule, in which a former very wealthy country like Germany would become an average third world country itself, as can be seen today, all in the name of a global horizontal dictatorship. So here in this picture, you see a homeless in Germany with a supermarket bag where it says Heimat neu entdecken. That means, in red, rediscover the fatherland. So that's quite funny, you know, it's quite cynical. I didn't know the Germans had that much humor, actually. So, and of course the supermarket, they mean like discover the fatherland new, rediscover the fatherland, like rediscover nice food and all nice clothes and all these sort of things. Whereas the German here became a homeless. And this is a thing that the real left-wingers, like the RAF were supposed to be, they love this sort of thing, you know, to give everything away to the third world, let the third world come over and all that sort of things. So that means this was the thing that the chairman of the Deutsche Bank, this is what he wanted to do. And so the RAF, they had no reason whatsoever for a left-wing movement to murder the man who wanted to give everything away and share everything with everybody in the whole world. So this means, this is the biggest proof that the RAF, or the phantom at least behind them, they were right-wing. They couldn't possibly be left-wing. So that must be the vertical rule nobility. So altogether, it says, of course, rediscover the fatherland, like give everything away to the whole world and become a homeless in your own fatherland. And then, being at the street, go begging and rediscover the fatherland. Excellent humor, Germans. I must admit that I suppose in the current situation, not even the English have that much humor left. So, ironically, those poor RAF members of the so-called ultra-left-wing RAF and Zweite Juni gave their lives away while taking orders from the far right, fighting the Republic. That, by the way, is in fact quite socialist on top of it all. This is how Pharaoh's nobility deceives the dumb slaves, who think to fight for leftish values while executing orders from the right. Here's the Soviet logo, which was not a symbol of communism, but a symbol against communism, as communism was a revolution by the people that was brought down by Lenin's very brutal counter-revolution, pretending to be at the people's side, but killing them massively. This is why Lenin said the best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves. So the opposition here is the people opposing the Russian nobility through a people's communist revolution. Thus, Lenin and his nobility crushed the people's uprising by hiding within the people's uprising, by hiding within the uprising, and killing it from within as a virus. Thus leading to Lenin's famous expression, the best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves, which is what he learned in SwiSSyland, where Lenin spent 7 years and where he was taught all on covert means, expanding his sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day, on how to make a system that conscripts vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations, in which preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, SwiSSy, and not praised. No expenditure is questioned. No rumor is printed. No secret is revealed. SwiSSy. All this and much more was taught to Lenin during his 7 years in SwiSSyland. Or do you think Lenin spent 7 years in SwiSSyland gazing at the mountains and doing long mountain walks? If you think Lenin spent 7 years meditating in SwiSSyland in the Alps, you might be mistaken with 7 years in Tibet. The Soviet logo here to the right, in fact, says it all. Who ruled and still rules not very communist Russia. So below is the hammer and sickle, representing the dumb slaves, where the sickle represents the peasantry, where farmers use a sickle to chop off and harvest the plants. The hammer represents the factory workers and construction workers. Therefore, on top of the hammer and sickle slaves is the 5-pointed star of Lenin's counter-revolution of the nobility, who rule over the dumb slaves as in a feudal system that Russia basically still is. Just go and see on the land in today's Russia and discover poverty in today's feudal Russia, where nobility is called oligarchs and where the dumb slaves are even proud to be that strong and masculine to live in poverty and blame the Western world for their status quo. So these are original pictures you can see here from the 19th century. So on the left is an original picture of the Russian nobility, and you can see how it's really pharaonic. And on the right you see the Russian population who don't even have shoes. And the picture to the right is probably or both from the communist era. So this is not communism, because communism, it means to share everything. In common, the word in common is from that, So this is the counter-revolution. Communism, what people call communism, is in fact Lenin's, or shall I say Swiss, counter-revolution of the vertical rule, seeing this enormous schism in between poverty and enormous wealth. Next to the People's Revolution, there's also the nobility's revolution of the princes who want to be kings and who organized through the concept of 3 and 4 to get their horizontal rule. And therefore, Lenin's counter-revolution came right after the 4, with next number 5 in the Soviet 5-pointed star. So to the left we see the Prince's Revolution of the Knights Templars, and the concept of 3 is the compass and the concept of 4 is the square. And the concept of 3 is them, our masters, and the concept of 4, the square, are the dumb slaves. Just as in the hammer and sickle, the dumb slaves. So afterwards, both of these symbols are revolutions of the nobility. Neither of them is a revolution here by the people. So to the left is the revolution of the princes who wanted to be kings, and to the right is the counter-revolution on the People's Revolution, and the counter-revolution was by the nobility again. So that's why it is 3, 4, 5, which is not a coincidence. And it's not a coincidence either that the G is the 3 plus 4 7th letter in the alphabet. There are no coincidences. Logos, secret symbols, and coat of arms always tell the whole story about who is in power and how they got there. Thus, in the Soviet logo showing Lenin's five-pointed star, of Lenin's Red Terror, of the nobility's counter-revolutions, controlled opposition, ruling over the dumb slaves with their sickles and hammers, symbolizing their daily work. So they have hammers and sickles, but they don't have any shoes. Well, that's typical Russia, isn't it now? So on the left is the West, and on the right is the East. The left is horizontal, and the right is vertical. But both are from the same pharaonic origins, who just have an internal war amongst pharaohs of Pharaoh's nobility, who either want horizontal to the left, or they want the old system, the feudal vertical one, to the right. That's all there is, folks. Nothing more. The Soviet logo literally shows a feudal system of Pharaoh's nobility, and all in red for Pharaoh's vertical rule of the Pertasser Red House of Lower Egypt. Of course, some people understood Lenin's betrayal, like this very brave jaywalker woman by the name of Fanny Kaplan from the Ukraine, who on August 30th, 1918, in Moscow, pumped 3 bullets into that traitor of the people, Vladimir Lenin. Fanny Kaplan was her code name inside the anarchist movement of the Real People's Revolution, and her real jaywalker name was Faiga Chaimovna Reutzblatt. In 2016, the Ukrainians honored this heroic jaywalker woman. Through the movie, her name was Fanny. In Ukrainian, Moja babusia Fanny Kaplan, meaning my grandmother, Fanny Kaplan. So you see in the image to the left, the title is Her Name Was Fanny, and to the right is another title, and it says My Grandmother, Fanny Kaplan. So apparently this is the same movie, but there are 2 titles, because on both sides it was made by Olena Demyanenko. Lenin lived on for a few more years, and due to Fanny's attack, he ended up in a wheelchair and died at the age of 54 only. Fanny got tortured by the Cheka and then executed. She called him a traitor to the revolution, which in fact he was. Lenin was a traitor, a liar, and a Swiss agent, just like Vladdy and Donny are today. If this brave jaywalker girl would be here today, she would have dealt with Liliputin all by herself. When I was on the Red Square in Moscow 40 years ago, I visited Lenin's mummified body. I was together with an American who had a cap on, because of which the Ruskies very aggressively started swearing and shouting to take off his cap and show respect to the traitor. While I was thinking how glad I was never to wear any caps or hats, and how brainwashed the Rusky slaves are. Now you know why they call it the Red Square of Pharaoh's Red House, which looks very pharaonic with a lot of marble, very pharaonically pompous, with a red star over it, and even has a mummy. Welcome to Pharaoh's Red Square, Red House in Moscow. Not very from Russia with love. So here we can read about Lenin's mausoleum. I'll read it for you on top. Lenin's mausoleum, also known as Lenin's tomb, is a mausoleum located at the Red Square in Moscow, Russia. It serves as the resting place of Soviet leader Vladimir Lenin, whose preserved body has been on public display since shortly after his death in 1924. So here you can see the thing. Well, if this doesn't look like ancient Egypt, together with the name and everything, yeah, look at it. All this marble stuff. This is ancient Egypt, people. It's the Red Square from Pharaoh's Red House, the Perpetrators. So you can read about it. I mean, why else would they call it the Red Square, eh? And remember, the square is the down place of a pyramid, there where the grass is, below a pyramid. That's a square. I mean, the under part of a pyramid is a square. You see? There he is. That's where I was. He's still there. And they never removed it, so I mean, it's still the same ones. Look, it's still the same ones who are ruling today. It's still the Reds. Russia never became a horizontal republic. Never, ever. They just pretended for a while, you know, to get their economy going. And they just lied to the world, just as Russia lied about the invasion in the Ukraine. You know, the US and England, they said, oh, they were looking at the satellite pictures and they said, well, look, they are amassing the military at the Ukrainian border. Well, you know, they're already seeing this like 6 months before. Russia said, no, it's just military exercise. I mean, one time a liar, always a liar. Hey, Liliputin, for me, you know, that's my rule. One time a liar, always a liar. And that counts for Donny as well. So here we can read about Fanny Kaplan. Same picture, I read it for you here. The real name was Faiga Chaimovna Roitblatt. and she was a Russian socialist revolutionary who attempted to assassinate Vladimir Lenin. She was arrested and executed by the Cheka in 1918. Born into a jaywalker family, Kaplan served a sentence of hard labor during the Tsarist years for her revolutionary activities. As a member of the Socialist Revolutionary Party, Kaplan viewed Lenin as a traitor to the revolution, which he was. He was a Swiss agent. He betrayed the Russian people, just as we can see it going on today. I'll tell you some more about it later. There is this Swiss politician who's doing interviews with Soloviev and with Peskov. I tell you, the Swiss are organizing something. So Kaplan viewed Lenin as a traitor to the revolution when the Bolsheviks enacted on August 30th, 1918. Funny enough, that's the same date when Adolf was in Zurich, August 30th, but not the same year. It was 5 years later, exactly the same date, 5 years later. She approached Lenin, who was leaving a Moscow factory, and fired 3 shots. Lenin was badly injured by 2 of the shots she fired. Interrogated by the Cheka, she refused to name any accomplices before being executed. And the Kaplan attempt and the Moisei Uritsky assassination, he was also a jaywalker, this guy here, Uritsky. But of course, not a normal jaywalker, but of the jaywalker nobility. And he got murdered by a normal jaywalker. You really have to see the difference between the jaywalker nobility and the normal jaywalkers. Also, the jaywalkers should do this because they all think that the jaywalker nobility, they are their friends. No, they are the RF Rave. Open up your eyes. They're the worst enemy. Okay, early life. She was born into a jaywalker family, etc. The German and the Yiddish surname Reutemann, and she was also being called Dora. That's the Red Dora. I heard about that. Anyway, a very brave woman. She woke up, she saw she was betrayed, but she doesn't understand about that there is a jaywalker nobility. Here was the gun, which was a Belgian gun, FN, Fabrique Nationale. Well, you can't see it because it's below in the picture, but no. Well, I can see the cartridges, and it looks like a caliber 32, which is like 7 millimeters, 0.65, which is not very powerful. It's even subsonic, and so this is why he survived. She was probably a good shot. I mean, she hit him twice, but it's in those days the caliber 32, it was very popular. So and it. But it put him out of action, the Lenin bloke. But too less powerful of a cartridge to do the job. Today, however, in contrast to the brave, funny Kaplan, there's Putin's sort of propaganda minister, Vladimir Solovyov, who, in his own words, admits to be a jaywalker.
Well, where should we start? Born in Moscow, so I'm a Muscovite, October 20th, 1963, in a Jewish family, not religious, but definitely Jewish, with extremely intelligent and well-educated parents, My mom is probably, well, she's a legend. And my mom is the best thing that could ever happen with me. My mom is everything. Beautiful, smart, brilliant. And sometimes it happens that even beautiful mothers give a birth to people that are hated in the West because they have no idea whom they hate. They just love to hate. I'm definitely Russian, of Jewish origin, and I'm extremely proud to be Russian. I think on Russian language. I adore my motherland. I do understand a lot about Russian history. I have 0 pink glasses, but I'm just old enough to see the world the way it is.
Solovyev is like his boss, Liliputin, organized with all those who want to destroy the JJ base in the Middle East. So Solovyev and Putin are organized with Iran, Syria, Lebanon, Hezbollah, and the Philistines. So how can a jaywalker like Solovyev be against the jaywalker state? Is he a real jaywalker? Well, no. I have no doubt that Solovyev is of the vertical jaywalker nobility, who, together with the rest of Russia's nobility, are against the horizontal rule jaywalker state in the Middle East. So to the left there is the real jaywalker people, and to the right is the jaywalker nobility, also called Erev Rav. And to the right is still the Soviet system, who the real jaywalker to the left was fighting against, and she was betrayed together with the rest of the Russian people and the normal jaywalker people. They were all betrayed by the Red Star, the Soviet Star, and the Red Army of Lenin, who we can still see today on the right-hand side. So the right-hand side of the jaywalker nobility, and of course also the Russian nobility, they won the revolution or the counter-revolution. And to the left, the jaywalkers, they lost. And finally, they had to escape, like in the 1990s, they had to escape to the JJ base if they could, which is of course also being ruled by pharaohs, by the jaywalker nobility. But that, again, that is the horizontal nobility in the JJ base, whereas to the right is the vertical Soviet Red Star, Red House of Pharaoh nobility. And in the JJ base, they are together with the US White House of Pharaoh, of the Perhet Pharaoh's nobility, which is horizontal. So to the left is horizontal. She wanted the people to rule as well. And to the right is absolutely vertical. It's a dictatorship. Just like Lenin from Zurich, today we can actually see this Swiss senator, Roger Koppel, and also from Zurich, teaming up with Solovyev, doing weekly podcasts, giving out Russian propaganda for all of Europe's right-wingers. Just as this Swiss senator by the name of Roger Koppel from Zurich is from the actual Swiss SVP Nazi party. Oh boy, Swissies preparing something again, like in the days of Lenin in Zürich, Switzerland, and all that happened afterwards, as you can see in the picture, which is a result of both Adolf and Lenin being in Zurich and sent back with a message and something to do. Lenin spent 7 years in SwiSSyland, in Geneva from 1903 till 1905 and 1908, in Bern, the capital, from 1914 to 1916, and in Zurich 1916 and 1917, until the Swissies put him and about 40 Ruski fighters on a sealed train from Zurich to Petrograd, now St. Petersburg. We can definitely see history repeating itself between Swissy, Zurich, Lenin, Solovyov, and the Swiss right-wingers. Maybe this time, with Russia falling apart, it's the other way around, and it needs a boat first, and then a sealed train back from Russia into the safe motherland in the Alps for Putin and Solovyov, where they can safely live in Gstaad for the rest of their lives. Just as the killer Prince of Savoy did. Whereas Putin and Solovyov are just another set of killer princes. Here to the right, you can see Koppel showing the inversed pyramid of death, and to the left, the Swiss game of liberating the Swiss end times devil, and as usual, attacking the EU, European community, as it's shown in the picture. Why? Well, because SwiSSyland always gets rich out of sowing war in Europe. And exactly this is the Swiss Soviet game. And this Swiss ultra-right-wing politician being delegated to obtain Swiss profits from Russia's wealthy elite politicians. Well, this is Swiss business as usual. Just another day at the office. So to the left, you see a Swiss newspaper from 1917, from December. So when Lenin already took the train from Zurich. And to the right, you see the newspaper of the Swiss right-winger, Mr. Koppel, Roger Koppel, who interviewed Solovyov and also Peskov, and who's at the moment playing the Swiss game. So here you can see the YouTube channel of the Swiss right-winger, ultra-right-winger senator who has a newspaper and who is in Swiss Parliament. So on top you can see his newspaper, and it has the same earth as the Pasdaran in Iran, or the 2. Juni, the 2nd of June, terrorist organization, or the Hezbollah, and which is all related to the Red Star, just as this guy here. So I don't think it's a coincidence. So here you see 3 of the interviews, and I think there are more. So on top is part 1. It says in German, but the interview is in English, as the title says as well. And so that's just a month ago. So there's part 1, 2, and 3. So go and have a look at it. It's quite interesting. I mean, nobody else in the Western world is allowed to do an interview with Solovyov and also Peskov. So how come Swissy is able to do this? I mean, what's going on? What don't we know? Well, I tell you, homie Ross knows. I know what's going on. It's history repeating itself, eh? Hey, Swissy. So here you can see he also did an interview. It's 2 days ago, that says, with the Russian, I think he's the foreign minister, or he's the Putin spokesman. And the name of his channel is on top. It's called Die Weltwoche. It means the weekly world. And so the interview is almost an hour, 2 days ago. Go and have a look. Then there is a short. It's only 4 hours ago. And in spite of the German title here, the interviews are all in English. Both Peskov and Solovyov, they speak very good English. Very amazing. I never expected this. Never ever. So go and have a look here. You can see what Swissy is preparing for us, eh? Solovyov has 10 children. He married 5 times, and one of his sons, by the name of Nikolai, lives in London, where Nikolai Solovyov allegedly married another guy. So here in this picture to the right, I mean, that's allegedly a bloke, but I don't know if it's true. And in the internet, there were some quite inappropriate pictures that I'll spare you because I don't want to have that filth in my channel. And Nikolai's mother is a member of the Duma, the Russian parliament. These pharaohs just tell the Ruskies what a Rusky wants to hear, while their real agenda is pink list killerism. Just like on the other side, where on January 20th, 2025, Donny solemnly swore at his inauguration that there's only man and woman. And then, a few hours later, he appointed the pink list killer Scott Besson as US Secretary of the Treasury, Adam and Steve as the American Finance Minister under Donny Stupo. Here you can see them very close together. Donny and Scott Besson. So the name says on the white shield to the left, and they are together in the White House. I can tell you, I don't think I would like to have the pink list killer that close to me. I wouldn't even like to have him in the vicinity. That's for sure. So here you can read about it. He's of French descent, so that's why I pronounce his name the French way, Besson, Scott Besson. And here to the left, where was it? That on the right-hand side below, it says spouse John Freeman, 2011, married. So, well, you can read the rest yourselves here. He's also a billionaire, probably. I think he is, actually. And so here, the personal life. He married John Freeman, a former New York City prosecutor. They're all in power positions. Look at that. That's, shall I dominate you or do you want to dominate me? You know, that's what it's all about, people. I'm serious. In 2011, they have 2 children born through surrogacy or whatever the hell that is. Besson reportedly has a close friendship with King Charles III. Well, of course he is. He was also friends with Donald Trump's brother, Robert, whose ex-wife, Blaine Trump, is the godmother of Besson's daughter. You can read about philanthropy, aren't they nice, etc. And yeah, so he got married with John Freeman, and now he's in the U.S. government. So let's listen what Donny said on January 20th, 2025 about man and woman only.
As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only 2 genders, male and female.
Also, Donny's actual presidential envoy, Richard Grenell, is a pink list killer who was Donny's director of national security. Here you can see them together in the White House. Richard Grenell, the presidential envoy, who used to be Donny's director of national security of the entire US. And Donny has his thumbs up. He says that it is okay. So here you can read about Richard Grenell, and here in blue it says he served as acting director of national intelligence under President Donald Trump, for which he is often cited as the first openly pink list killer. He previously served as the United States ambassador to Germany and as the special presidential envoy for Serbia in peace negotiations, well, etc. And here it says, on the right-hand side below, domestic partner, Matt Lashy. He's an ambassador to Germany, very important person. Shall I dominate you or are you gonna dominate me? The director of national intelligence, whoa, very important. A lot of dominating to do, etc., etc. Personal life, he has a long-time partner, Matt Lashy. Well, let's listen one more time what Donny has to say about this, and what he said on in 2025. Hey, Stupo?
As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
Well, I think you've been seriously lied to by Stupo here, and he fooled you all again. Because the Pinkless Killer agenda is global, and both in Russia and in America, the presidents lie about it to their dumb slaves. So here in the image it says Adam and Steve 2 times, Trump made, and in the middle it says US Finance Minister, that is the Scott Bessel. And on the right-hand side, it says U.S. Director of National Security. So that's on the right-hand side. And yeah, shall I dominate you, or you're gonna dominate me? Well, I've got the impression the America is being like dominated. So let's listen one more time what Donny has to say about this.
As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
Did you just see that? How Donny got a standing ovation for his lies. It is interesting to see that on the very same date of August 30th, when Fanny Kaplan shot Lenin, 5 years later, Adolf was in Zurich, where also Lenin came from. So, I suppose Adolf was invited to Zurich on that very same date of August 30th, exactly 5 years later, to celebrate that their man Lenin from Zurich survived the assassination attempt. And because the horizontal Fanny Kaplan was a jaywalker who shot the vertical Swiss agent Lenin, it was discussed what to do with all the horizontal jaywalkers who were a grave danger and contributed to the downfall of the remaining vertical nobility of Europe. And, well, now we all know the answer to that. On August 30th, 1923, the Swissies in Zurich, like Emperor Nero, did a unanimous thumbs down, and things were decided. The inversed pyramid hand sign of the inversed pyramid and downward triangle of death means the same as Nero's downward thumb of the Roman emperor ordering death. Downward thumb is the inverted triangle of death. So these two hand signs, left and right, mean the same. Both mean the inverted pyramid of death, as indeed both Romans and the Nazis brought death and destroyed Europe, genociding the white tribes. I already explained to you that the horizontal Roman Empire was founded by the horizontal White House of Upper Egypt and against everything that is vertical. Another important date to look at is when Germany became horizontal on November 9th, 1918. And 2 days later, the horizontal aggressors of Germany were so happy that they managed to make Germany horizontal on November the 11th. World War I could end. So on the left-hand side, you see Germany was an empire ruled by the emperor, so it was vertical. And then on the right side, on November 9th, Germany became horizontal and a republic, the Weimar Republic. And only 2 days later, there could be peace on November the 11th, 1918. As I told you, that 2 world wars were only waged between nobility's vertical and nobility's horizontal rule. So 2 days before the end of World War I, the horizontal Weimar Republic was founded on November 9th, 1918, and lasted until the man from Zurich on March 23rd, 1933 made a vertical dictatorship out of Germany again. So another world war could happen to make Germany horizontal again. Just as the other man from Zurich made Russia vertical again 17 years earlier. This is why the dates and their numbers are important, because they all have a meaning, making it possible to understand wars, anticipate wars, and possibly avoid wars. Why, in April 1917, did Germany let the sealed train from Zurich with Lenin in it through Germany and all the way from southern to northern Germany? Well, because in 1917 Germany was still vertical, and so was Lenin, very vertical. If Lenin would have been horizontal and a real revolutionary for the people, the vertical ruled German Empire would never have let Lenin through. So on the left-hand side, at that time, you see it says vertical Germany in 1917. And on the right-hand side, you see the train with Lenin coming from Zurich, where it says the vertical Lenin 1917. It was a counter-revolution, And this is why the German vertical empire let Lenin through to help Russia's vertical nobility against the people's horizontal revolution. Of course, the German Weimar Republic from 1918 to 1933 never was really horizontal, as Germany's vertical nobility had no other choice against the tremendous horizontal powers of the Allied forces of the Entente than to pretend to have become horizontal, just as in fact Russia did. And therefore the saying here in the image to the left side, the best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves. This is what Lenin said. And the opposition of the nobility is horizontal, and the nobility is vertical. So the best way to control the horizontal opposition is to lead it ourselves and to pretend to be horizontal. I'll read it to you first here in the image. So from 1919 to 1941, vertical Germany and vertical Russia, both pretending to be horizontal and pretending to be nice with each other, after the laws of being horizontally civilized to other nations. And therefore, the two horizontal pretenders, Russia and Germany, had secret military trainings and exchange of armaments going on from 1919 till 1941, until Swissy in 1941 paid their agent Adolf 1 billion Swiss francs to attack Russia. So here in the image on top you see 1941, 1 billion Swiss francs for Operation Barbarossa. And below you see a 1 with 9 zeros of Swiss francs. And that was in 1941. So if you want to know what 1 billion Swiss francs from 1941 is worth today, well, you can easily put another 6 zeros behind the number. So here you can read about it, already shown that to you already 16 years ago, about how the Swiss, they financed. So here it's in German. And below you can see in German, Milliarde, that's a billion, Swiss francs, Schweizer Franken. So habe Hitler 1941 1 Milliarde Schweizer Franken als Kredit erhalten für den Russland-Feldzug. I translate it for you in a minute, just be patient. And so this is very important. And if you don't know about horizontal and vertical, you will never understand what's going on here. And if you don't know about SwiSSyland, you will not understand it either. So now I'll translate it for you. So here's the translation. On top it says détecter la langue, allemand en anglais. So it was blue before, now it's grey. Oh, now it's blue again. I don't know why. On the right hand side in blue, there it says, so the left side is German and the right side is English. And in blue it says, Switzerland was of great benefit to German military and economic planning For instance, Hitler received a loan of 1 billion Swiss francs in 1941 for the invasion of Russia. And this is an official text by some German national television. And this is very important to know. And you'll find this everywhere nowadays. So here on top it says the German-Soviet Union relations from 1918 to 1941. So they had peace, and here in blue we can read on top the secret military cooperation, the Treaty of Rapallo between Weimar Germany, horizontal, and the Soviet Russia, pretending to be horizontal, but they never were, was signed by the German foreign minister. And well, they were doing secret military cooperations. Here on top it says rumors of a secret military supplement to the treaty soon spread for a long time, and that Soviet German military, etc., etc. So it's all about horizontal and the vertical. If you don't understand it, you will never understand it. And you think, why? Why they're having peace and then war again? What's going on, you know? So they had peace from 1918 to 1941 until SwiSSyland gave 1 billion Swiss francs to Germany with the order to attack Russia. And I will explain you why. Well, you can read the rest yourselves. So here is the AI. On top here, I read it for you: to evade the strict military limitations of the 1919 Treaty of Versailles, which forbade Germany from having an air force, tanks or heavy artillery, the Weimar Republic entered into secret agreements with the Soviet Union. Germany tested forbidden arms and trained military personnel on Russian soil in exchange for sharing technological expertise. The covert cooperation coordinated by the German military Special Section R led to the establishment of 3 primary testing and training facilities in the USSR, in Lipetsk, Kama, and Tomka. You can read it yourselves. This is nothing new, but I'll put it in a different light. In connection to SwiSSyland and their 1 billion in connection to the horizontal and the vertical, and in connection to pretending to be horizontal, and in connection to the vice into which the Russian people were put in, coming up. So on top of the cooperation they were already having together, Russia and Germany, from 1918, on top of that, in 1939, they also made the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which you can see here. There's the picture here. There you go. They're shaking hands, probably having a knife in the other hand or something. No, they don't. Probably Swissy has. So everything okay until Swissy came in 1941 with 1 billion, and then it was over. And I fear, as history is always repeating, now with that Swiss senator that I just showed you before, who's talking to Peskov and Solovyov, the same thing will happen again. As there might be newcomers, I explain it one more time here about the vertical rule and the horizontal rule. I will talk a bit quicker. I try to talk a bit slower usually because there's so many people for whom English is not their native tongue, and to make it easier for them. But I just can't hear myself anymore explaining this again and again, so I really have to talk a bit quicker now. Explaining this here once more. So there's the vertical rule. Like on the left-hand side, you see an emperor or a king who is on top of the hierarchy and the pyramid, and he's giving all the orders straight down to the last person in the empire. So that is a vertical rule, which is feudal. Then, in Germany had an emperor, the Russians had the Tsars. On the right-hand side, there's a horizontal rule of a republic. That's why we had the revolution in France and in America. And a horizontal rule, as you can see in the picture, there's the parliament, and there are many people sitting together at the same level, and they talk together. So that is horizontal, because they're at the same level. To get a solution, they talk, from the French word parler et mentir. Parlement, talk and lie. Ment is from the French word mentir, to lie. So, of course, the people never understood that, but they just make fun of us, In England, they got something else. They got a constitutional monarchy. So it became a republic and horizontal. That's why in 2 world wars, England was on the side of the biggest republic in the world, which is America, who tried to crush Germany. And France has been trying to crush Germany and Russia all the time for hundreds of years, starting with Napoleon. So actually France, America, and England are the aggressors and not Germany. I'm not in favor of Germany or Russia. I'm just telling you history, how it is. And so they just let the English king keep his castle and keep his head, most of all, but made it a horizontal republic anyway. The king doesn't have much to say. He's just there in his castle, and that's why England is a constitutional monarchy. So this is basically the vertical and the horizontal. And this is why we had revolutions, we had 2 world wars, and now the 3rd one coming up, because it's still the same thing. And today Russia is very vertical. It's still the nobility ruling, in spite of the fact during the Russian Revolution the people ruled for a very, very short time. And then the Swissies, they sent their man Lenin with a lot of soldiers in that sail train, and to make Russia vertical again. Just like, I think it was 16 years later, in 1933, their man, also from Zurich, and there was Adolf, of course, and the same thing happening all over again until 1945. But Russia never became horizontal. Well, Putin pretended for a while, but we all know it's a vertical dictatorship again. And so, like to the left, you could put Putin in that robe there, very vertical. And the Duma on the right-hand side, they have nothing to say, absolutely nothing. So this is what it's all about, vertical against horizontal. So here everything is fine for 23 years, from 1918 till 1941, and both pretending to be horizontal and civilized, until 1941, when all of a sudden, through the intervention of SwiSSyland on the left-hand side, their financial intervention, Germany suddenly attacked Russia. Well, does this mean that Germany all of a sudden became genuinely horizontal? No. And now things get even more complicated, which I partly explain in this video here from 3 years ago on the same channel called Agent of the Garter, Adolf, about Adolf being in fact a British agent of the Garter. But for the other part, you must understand that the vertical rule counter-revolution of Russia's nobility couldn't control the revolting Russian people anymore and needed vertical help from the outside, like a vice to squeeze in the Russian people from both sides. On one side, the Nazi army, and in the back, Stalin's vertical assassins. So you see the guy to the right, well, he's not there to fight the enemy. He's there, it's a Rusky, you see the Rusky hat. He's there to shoot his own man in the back who wants to flee. The same thing is happening today. You know, it's like history repeating itself all over again, always. And on the left-hand side, at the top, you see the guys with the spades. They're digging graves. And this is an execution squad. You know, they're killing their own man, just like today in the Ukraine war. In no other army, so many of their own men have been shot in the back. This is why in World War II, Russian men were sent to the front unarmed, and anyone turning back got shot by the verticals. So for those to whom English is not their mother tongue, the machine you see here on the right-hand side, where the people are squeezed in, it's called the vice, V-I-C-E. And this is what happened to the Russians. You know, they got squeezed in. And this is why the other reason that finally Adolf, he attacked Russia to come and help the vertical rule of in Russia. So the people, you can see that in the image to the right and to the left as well, they got squeezed in between the two vertical nobility. And this is basically, and you can see this on the left-hand side in this wall, this is basically the Horus matrix. I explained that to you many times, I'm not going to repeat it. The Horus matrix, you know, making a new human race, new from scratch. Kill the man, the women who stayed behind, pregnant, they can raise the boys new from scratch. Not anymore with the influence of their fathers. The horizontal Russian people who wanted a horizontal republic, a democratic, after the revolution, they got squeezed in Pharaoh's vertical nobility in front and at the rear, like a vice, and quite similar to what we see today, but not entirely. If the jaywalkers would have stayed quiet and endured the will and at sometimes injustice of the vertical masters of the nobility, then the whole catch would never have happened. If the jaywalkers, for example, together with many more examples, wouldn't have murdered the German Count Wilhelm von Meerbach in Moscow, 1918, by the jaywalker Yakov Blumkin and many more jaywalker attacks and assassinations on the German and Russian nobility. This brought the wrath of Europe's vertical nobility unto the jaywalkers, with all the consequences that followed afterwards. After all, Europe's vertical rule granted the jaywalkers on their territory for about 2,000 years in relative safety. From the initial persecution of the horizontal Romans being the initial reason for the jaywalkers to leave the Middle East and come to Northern Europe of the vertical nobility and be relatively safe. Therefore, it is quite ironic that many jaywalkers like Fanny Kaplan and many others attacked the vertical rule nobility, who in fact had offered the jaywalkers refuge in Europe for 2,000 years, which during the turmoils around 1918 in Germany, Russia, Italy, and Austria, and the death of the vertical rule nobility saw that as treason and a knife in the back by those whom they'd protected for 2,000 years. Of course, only the jaywalker nobility knew what was really going on and dragged the normal jaywalkers into this internal battle within Pharaoh's nobility between the vertical and horizontal rule, in which, of course, not all jaywalkers participated. But all jaywalker nobility did. So the jaywalkers themselves, they call the evil ones the Erev Rav, as you see here. And apparently King Solomon was one of them, the Erev Rav. And at the back, at the wall, you see the seal of Solomon and the devil. And allegedly, he had the control over 72 demons, just like the Muslims with their 74 virgins. Apparently in the Middle East, it's always 72 demons or 74 virgins or demons who are virgins. I don't know. And so in spite of the fact that the jaywalkers know about the Erev Rav and they've been warned about it, still every time they fall for it. And in this context, you must see Vladimir Solovyov, allegedly being of the vertical rule jaywalker nobility, here in the picture with King Solomon, and together with his boss being against the horizontal JJ Bays in the Middle East, and whom we see now teaming up with this Swiss right-wing politician Roger Koppel of the Swiss SVP Nazi Party. Just as Lenin was in Zurich. Here we can see another 5-pointed red star of Pharaoh's vertical rule, who was trained for 5 years in SwiSSyland from 1996 till 2001, and probably even longer, and up to 9 years, together with his sister Kim Yo-jong, whom they call the Red Princess. As in Pharaoh's Perpetrators Red House of Lower Egypt and its vertical rule. So here in the AI, you can read about it. As they say, AI doesn't lie. Well, I don't know about that, eh? So I'll read it for you. Kim Yo-jong is the younger sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and widely regarded as the second most powerful figure in the regime, dubbed the Red Princess. She serves as her brother's chief propagandist. So she's like the North Korean Solovyov, the gatekeeper and primary policymaker for relations with South Korea and the United States. I suppose Donny, he's totally into the Red Princess's stuff. So here you can read about it. And here you can see everywhere they talk about the Red Princess. Here as well in the media. So it's not only Homie Ross telling you this. Here, the Red Princess all over. Now, why they call her the Red Princess? I mean, princess is nobility, and red, you would say communist. Well, first of all, they are not communist. There is no communism. And red is the red house of Pharaoh, where they had princesses, and whose descendants is everywhere. Here you can see more, the Red Princess. It's pharaonic Egyptian nobility all over. And here you can read about Kim Yo-jong. And here in blue, well, it was in blue, there it was. Between 1996 and December 2000, Kim studied with her eldest brother at the Liebefeld Steinhölzli Public School in Bern, Switzerland, under the assumed name Pak Mi Hwang. On one of my older channels, I went there, I went filming, you can still see it. I went to his school and I went to where he used to live. And immediately the Swiss Gestapo, they turned up, of course. And this here, I wanted to show you some more about, I can't find it now. Yeah, here. About the Workers' Party of Korea. And you see the logo here? Well, I'll tell you some more about it in a minute. So here in the AI, you can read about it, how there are 4 billion of North Korea in SwiSSyland when Kimmy and his sister, when they were living there in Bern, they opened up a Swiss bank account. So, I'll read it for you. Intelligence agency and de facto groups estimate that Kim regime's secret offshore slush funds amount to approximately 4 billion. a significant portion of which was historically stashed in secret Swiss bank accounts. The funds were allegedly generated through illegal activities like arms sales, narcotics, and counterfeiting. The timeline of these funds and Switzerland's involvement involves several key details. Well, you can read the rest yourselves. So again, it's not just Homiros saying all this. Now look, it's everywhere. So, instead of in the Ukraine war and all this, fighting Russia, fighting North Korea and all the other red stars and vertical nobilities like in the Middle East and all that, why not just block Pharaoh's base in the Alps? Then it would all be it would all be over in a second, and no more necessities to wage any more wars, no more First, Second, Third World Wars. Just block their base in the Alps, and that's it. Final. So on the right-hand side, we see the red princess from Egypt, you might say. And left bottom in the image where she is, you can see also the logo, just as on the left-hand side, the logo of the North Korean Workers' Party, just like Soviet things, And I'll explain it for you. There's, of course, the hammer and the sickle. The hammer is for the workers in the factories. The sickle to the right is to do the harvest and cut the crops. And in the middle, there is the Asian writing brush, for the calligraphy. But that means for the orders. That's them, our masters. They are higher, as you can see. And they're giving the orders to the slaves on the left-hand side with the hammer and the other slaves with the sickle. That's why the brush is there. And they are the longest, the highest, and it's for the intellectual part, the brain. So the brain is in the middle, and it is the Asian writing brush. And of course, during their youth in SwiSSyland, the Red Princess and her brother, Kim Jong-un, opened a Swiss bank account where they accumulated an estimated $4 billion today, which, well, it's not a very communist thing to do with the North Korean population and the people living in poverty. So how come? Well, because all these reds are the product of a Red House counter-revolution of the vertical rule feudal system taking back the power. So please stop calling it communism, because the great idea of communism got entirely crushed by Swiss agent Lenin in October 1917 and was never seen again anywhere on this planet ever since. Of course, there also was the Red Prince, here on the right side, being carried like a true pharaoh of the Red House on the left side, in this genuine picture from the 20th century in Asia. just another branch of Pharaoh's vertical red house of the Cambodian Khmer Rouge, who murdered 2 million Cambodians from 1975 to 1979 under Pol Pot and King or Prince Norodom Sihanouk, also called the Red Prince. So you see that, as always, Pharaoh's nobility were behind the genocide. And also, Pol Pot's real name was Salot Sar, and Sar is the demotic pharaonic word for king or pharaoh, as in a sarcophagus, a box to put the king in when he's dead. And we also find it back in the words like Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. Prince Charles, or King Charles, his official title is Sar, which stands for Son Altesse Royale. It means His Royal Highness in French, or in Italian it's Sua Altezza Royale. We got also Caesar, the King of Rome, the Tsars in Russia. And here in this Cambodian genocide, 2 million people dead, there's Salot Sar. Coincidence? No, no way. This here is the flag and logo of the Khmer Rouge that represents the temple of Angkor Wat that was built almost 1,000 years ago by King Suryavarman, where again there is the pharaonic Sar in the king's name of Suryavarman or Saryavarman. Angkor Wat supposedly represents Mount Meru of the local mythology, with Meru being the official demotic pharaonic word for pyramid. And in the logo, the pharaonic trinity of Isis, Horus, and Seth can be seen, with the big Seth in the middle, and what our masters put about everywhere, and what I've filmed for you many times outside, in the streets, on roundabouts, and in business logos. Etymologically, Khmer comes from the demotic Ka for soul, Mer for pyramid, and rouge means red in French. So Khmer Rouge means the souls of the red pyramid in demotic, or Khmer for our souls are in the pyramid, as you can see here in the image. And stands, of course, for the red house of Lower Egypt, and where is the third largest pyramid of Egypt, the first true pyramid of Egypt, called the Red Pyramid. So this is a genuine picture. It looks out of this world, but on the horizon you can see there are buildings, and it's a real street here. And it stands, of course, in the Pertasser in Lower Egypt, in the Red House. And all of this is related to the Khmer Rouge, to the Red Soviet Star, to all the genocides, and of course to SwiSSyland. So you see, everywhere are Pharaoh's red armies in Germany, in Cambodia, in North Korea, in Russia, the RAF and the vertical rule Muslim states like Iran and others. So here again on the left-hand side you see the logo of the Khmer Rouge, and on the right-hand side there's Angkor Wat, the temple, and that was built after Mount Meru, some sort of a mythological mountain. And it's written here exactly that way, Meru, that Mer or Meru are the demotic pharaonic words for a pyramid. And then it looks like a pyramid, doesn't it? It's all pharaonic. So here it says the Khmer Rouge, and here again is the logo. So now you know all about it. It's all pharaonic. And here you see there's the prince, or he became the king, Norodom Sihanouk. And here's same, his nickname, the Pink Prince. If the red color has been too long in the sun, it gets pink. You know, the same happened with the Knights Templars, actually. But it was the Red Prince, not the Pink Prince. I mean, he was not a pink list killer. Just an ordinary killer. Just about 2 million people, eh? And this is what all the genocides are about, you know, in this internal war between the vertical and the horizontal rule. So sometimes it's the vertical rule killing the slaves of the horizontal rule, and sometimes it's the other way around, you know, killing each other's slaves. And this is why we had the whole catch. This is the only reason, there's no other reason. And the dumb slaves are just, many of them, they just follow and follow the orders, obey the orders, but they are not the brain behind it. The brain is Pharaoh, Pharaoh's nobility. And there was something else I wanted to show you. No, I can't. Well, you can read it yourselves. There's the etymology. Rouge, it means red. Ah, here, look. Look at the scarf, you know? The tablecloth again, like the other killers today are using. And King Charlie is using it as well, you know, for the next genocide coming up. Again, the tablecloth guys, eh? Well, you can read it yourself, you know. So here you can read about Pol Pot. At the top left-hand side, it says his real name. He was born Salot Sar. Sar is in a sarcophagus. And here on top now, he murdered about 2 million people. The Tsar, the king, murdered 2 million people. Well, you got the hammer and the sickle again. It's all the Red Army. And you got the other one on the right-hand side here. Again, that was the Red Prince. You can read his name. King Sihanouk, Norodom Sihanouk. Sounds very pharaonic. Looks very pharaonic. And, well, etc. Look it up yourselves. Now here we can read about Angkor Wat. Here's the temple. You see that's exactly the logo of the Khmer. Well, the Khmer built it. It was an empire called Khmer. It says here on top, the Khmer king, Suryavarman. That's Saryavarman, of course. And here they talk about Mount Meru. It's a mythological mountain. And Meru, it's the Pharaonic word for pyramid. The Khmer Rouge, like the red pyramid. And so forth. So here the AI doesn't lie. The ancient Egyptian word for pyramid is Mer, M-R, pronounced Mer. And you have to believe me, it's also Meru, or only Me. And only the consonants were written, so MR in Pharaonic. So here you can read about the Red Pyramid, which it was built like 5,000 years ago. And here again the picture. It looks a bit reddish, so it does exist. So all these kings and princes, you know, I've proven to you linguistically and the etymology, it's all from ancient Egypt. They are masters. And the Khmer Rouge, it's related to the Red Pyramid. Meru, Mer, Me. It's all related. And all these red armies, they're all from the Pharaoh's Red House. The flag and logo of Red Eastern Germany shows the compass, concept of three, representing the masters on top of the dumb slave workers and their hammer, literally holding them down on a red underground of the Pertasser Red House, surrounded by the wheat grains, for which you need the sickle to harvest, thus representing the Russian sickle in the DDR logo. And as always, SwiSSyland plays a role in it all, where both the reds and the whites, both vertical and horizontal, find neutrality. Therefore, at the end of the Red Eastern German GDR, or DDR in German, in 1989, a suspected $100 billion were hidden in SwiSSyland by the Red GDR German Democratic Republic, and that was never seen again. So here it says in the AI, up to 100 billion East German marks were taken out of the GDR, the German Democratic Republic, and stashed in secret Swiss bank accounts by ruling party elites before reunification. The German government has spent decades fighting in Zurich courts to retrieve these missing state and party assets, though with limited success. The Swissies are just doing whatever they want, you know. There are no international laws in SwiSSyland. It's just something else. So in order to understand it all, maybe some of you remember this video I made. You can see it in the title here, that the GDR chairman, so the president was called a chairman apparently, Erich Honecker, he was an ethnic Swiss, which I prove in this video from 10 years ago. So with that, you know, having the man inside, you know, with that achieved, you know, it was probably quite easy, you know, to steal the 100 billion. Okay, there were no dollars. Apparently they were GDR marks. I have no clue how much there was, but probably still a lot, eh? So here's it on my other channel, 2016, my channel Gatse Frats. The title is there, so go look it up. And oh, look at that, I got 21 comments. Look at that. Long time ago, right? So the GGR chairman Erich Honecker was an ethnic Swiss, so it was all, controlled and all planned. Of course, this interaction between the Reds and SwiSSyland, stealing from Germany, was a preliminary of the Wirecard heist of the century by Jan Marsalek, whom you can see here in the middle, and Russia, about which I have no doubt that the money ended up in SwiSSyland, as the contacts had already been laid between the Reds, Russia, and SwiSSyland in the preliminary of the previous East German heist. Jan Marsalek of Wirecard is Austrian, who allegedly escaped to Russia. And just look to the right side at the official coat of arms of Austria that has the same hammer and sickle as the Soviet flag. Coincidence? No, of course not. Lenin's Soviet empire was vertical, and so was the huge Habsburg Empire of Austria, making chances extremely high that Russia and Austria are teaming up today in huge financial crime. Just think of Lily-Putin visiting that private party in Austria in 2018, waltzing with Austria's foreign minister and discussing the Soviet-Austrian hammer and sickle while dancing away, Matilda. So here we see, it's the other way around, here it's sickle and hammer, and we see the colors of in the middle is the Austrian flag. It says red, white, red, and 2 times red, and red is vertical of the red house, so that's more important. Now, so before it was a vertical rule in the empire, now Austria is white, an horizontal rule, which is less important apparently. That's why there's 2 times red and only 1 time white. They probably have hopes that it will be red and vertical again. And they're working on it, believe me. At the moment, they're all working at it. And so this is the explanation of the colors. It's all about the pertaster and the perhet, about Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt, the red house and the white house. And it can all be seen in the symbols, the images, the numbers. AI doesn't lie as well. So here you see that video of Putin waltzing away in Austria in the middle. On the left-hand side is the Austrian Empire, also with the Austrian flag. And on the right side, another Austrian with his blue eyes. And there's the title, Cossacks of Death. On the same channel, I made it just 3 months ago. And so with Russia collapsing at the moment, so it's quite clear when it does collapse that Lily-Putin, he's going into the Alps, either in Austria or either in SwiSSyland. In the next episode or next video, I'll tell you more about the Swiss connection into the Wirecard affair. That is, if the Swiss B-26 death squad won't get me before that. The world is divided into red and white, and SwiSSyland is their neutral red and white playground to hide the money. The 21st century already has its biggest financial scandal with the Wirecard scandal of 2020 in the middle of Pharaoh's bug war. So no one really paid attention when almost 2 billion euros went missing. Together with Wirecard's high-ranking Jan Marsalek, who allegedly fled to Russia, for which there are no solid proofs. And I fear that the Swissies are using the Russian camouflage to conceal yet another financial crime out of the motherland of all financial crime, SwiSSyland. Here in the AI, you can read about it. I read it for you on the top. The Wirecard scandal is centered around 1.9 billion in missing cash assets that auditors discovered likely never existed. This massive corporate fraud led to the collapse of the German fintech giant in June 2020. The cost of the breakdown, 1.9 billion in missing cash balances from trust accounts, another 20 billion euros in total losses suffered by stock market investors, another 4 billion in debt owed to institutional creditors at collapse, 99% drop in share price following the revelation. The summary of the fraud. The heist was not a bank robbery by a multi-year accounting manipulation. Wirecard executive inflated company revenue and profits using a web of third-party acquirers and fake offshore transactions. So it's quite complicated. The fictitious profits were recorded as cash stored in escrow accounts in the Philippines when auditors finally demanded direct proof from the custodian banks. The banks confirmed they had no record of Wirecard as a client, exposing the 1.9 billion haul. So it was pretty much premeditated and organized. And here you see two of the main criminals. Markus Braun, he was from Austria. He's still in prison in Germany. And Jan Marsalek, also from Austria, and allegedly fled to Russia, which is not very likely. If I punch SwiSSyland into the machine, it says that Jan Marsalek utilized a robust Swiss connection using private Swiss and Lebanese banks and relied on Swiss-based agents. So this is what AI says. I'll read it for you. The Swiss connection to Jan Marsalek primarily involves his covert use of the Swiss banking system to facilitate international espionage. As the fugitive former COO of the collapsed German fintech company Wirecard, Marsalek utilized private Swiss banks in 2014 to issue anonymous preloaded debit cards. These cards allowed politicians, assassins, and operatives to move up to 2 million annually across borders without detection, essentially creating a massive slush fund for Russian intelligence agencies. The Wirecard scandal and Swiss banks. It's always the Swiss banks. So they're the masters of financial crime, and they won't stop. This is perfected financial crime here. Jan Marsalek partnered with private Swiss and Lebanese banks to orchestrate a project pitching anonymous debit cards to MasterCard. He claimed these were for ultra-high net worth clients who wanted to avoid their names being known in public restaurants. In reality, investigators found that these untraceable cards were the perfect mechanism for moving illicit funds and financing covert Russian operations globally. When Wirecard collapsed in 2020 amid a 1.9 billion fraud, Marsalek quickly fled Germany, assisted by private security contacts. He's currently living in Moscow under the protection of Russian security services. The investigation revealed that his financial network, including ties to Swiss financial institutions, laid the groundwork for evading sanctions and funding Russian-backed mercenaries and covert operations in regions like Syria and Libya. This is the Hezbollah probably, and they're all together. It's all part of the Red Army, as I've shown you. For a visual breakdown of how the massive Wirecard fraud unfolded and launched Marsalek into hiding. Here, that's a network of spies in Vienna. Well, go and see my video I made about that. Remember how I told you 12 years ago in this video here, how the Swiss Nazi grey eminences François Juni, whom you can see here, and Hans Huber founded the Arabic Al-Taqwa Bank to finance Islamic terror organizations. If you want to steal a lot of money from some company, like the 2 billion Wirecard euros, you just don't want to transfer it to some unstable currency like the Russian ruble. But you use a stable currency like the Swiss franc. The Swiss franc is very stable because of the Swiss neutrality, never engaging in any wars. So you won't lose all your money. When through war, crisis, or revolution, all your money turns worthless overnight. So the whole Wirecard Russia involvement must be considered nonsense. In an unstable country like Russia, with an unstable currency like the ruble, the 2 billion stolen euros of the Wirecard heist are definitely not in Russia, but very likely to be in SwiSSyland, who this year, 2026, in the global race for the digital money, Swissy launched their own digital currency, which they've called stablecoin. Maybe this is why the Swissies needed the 2 billion Wirecard euros for the legal currency backing that is international standard in banking affairs. Here in the image it says Ruski ruble plunge, Ruski ruble plunge. Why do I use the word Ruski or Ruski? Well, because in English-speaking armies, other than the American, I suppose, Ruski is the army slang for a Russian or a Russian soldier, or just any communist. And why is that so? Well, because Ruski is the official Russian word for a Russian, which they use themselves. I remember in Angola in 1981 with the SADF, the South African Defense Forces, where we caught some trembling Russian soldiers who only uttered the words Ruski, Ruski, Ruski all the time. So I guess the nickname was quickly given. I suppose they do that in any war, Second World War, First World War, so that's how it became Ruski. Because you can see on the left-hand side, probably just after his capture, probably somebody punched him in the left eye as well. The Ruski, he looks miserable, the only words he could utter were like Ruski, 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 please spare my life or something. And on the right-hand side, you see, he'd just taken a bath. The general there, he had given him a bath for the picture. He combed his hair and cleaned clothes and all that for the newspaper. And below, on the right-hand side, it says, Ruski, Ruski, Ruski. That's what they say when they get captured. And this guy here, apparently, his name was Nikolai Pestretsov. And why is the general, why is he smiling like that? He's got a funny smile on his face, doesn't he? I can tell you why. Because he was smiling that we took a prisoner. He didn't understand it. Why take a prisoner? Because he knew normally we didn't take any prisoners. That's why he's got the grin on his face. So, in case you don't believe me, here the AI doesn't lie, hopefully. Ruski is an English slang term for a Russian person or things associated with Russia, like communists or Russian soldiers. It is a transliteration of the Russian adjective Ruskiye. So it means they're using it themselves. Depending on the context, it can be used colloquially or as a mildly derogatory term. How can it be derogatory if they use it themselves? It's nonsense. Particularly historically during the Cold War. So a Russian person, primary meanings, a colloquial slang term to denote someone of Russian nationality or ethnicity. The USSR historically used to refer to the Soviet government or its leaders, Ruski. And here, I'll read it for you. To say Russian in Russian, use Ruski. There it says, in the middle, top in the middle, R-O-O-S-K-E-E, Ruski. Exactly the same word, Ruski. For a male or the language. And for a female, it's Ruskaya, for a female. To say the country Russia, you say Россия, Россия, etc. The word changes based on gender, context, and whether it refers to the language or the person. So again, a Russian person, a male, or in the Russian language, it's pronounced Ruski. There you go. So it's not bad. They say it themselves. So it can't be bad, eh? No, we're not going to offend any Russians, shall we? No, we have war with them, but of course we're not going to offend them, eh? No, why would we do that? So here you can see the digital Swiss stable coin, where it says Swiss franc backed, with the chip in the middle and probably 666 on the flip side. In order to keep SwiSSyland and their coins stable, it needs this strategy described by President Kennedy. So there it says on the right side, for we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy. You probably know the rest, so I'll let you read it yourselves. In order to lead all suspicion onto Russia, Jan Marsalek of the Wirecard heist even flew from Zurich airport in a MiG-29 Russian fighter jet to Russia, using the Swiss MiG Flug company. MiG is the Russian fighter jet, and Flug is the Swiss-German word for flight, like the Nazis in the Luftwaffe had a Fluggeschwader, meaning a flight squadron. But okay, we're not so much discussing air flight, but rather financial flight. So here you can read about the company MiG Flug. I'll read it for you. Is MiG Flug GmbH is a Zürich, it's always Zurich, isn't it? Lenin, Hitler, every time it's Zurich. It's a Switzerland-based aviation and space adventure company specialized in fighter jet flights. So, and here you can see it, there's a lot of famous persons who took a flight with a MiG from Zurich. I don't know all these people, I have no idea who they are, but never mind. But I know this one here. Look, Jan Marsalek, he's even in the Wikipedia. Jan Marsalek is an Austrian fugitive former businessman and suspected spy operative for Russia. No, it's too thick. Yeah. From 2010 to 2020, he was chief operating officer of the German payment processing firm Wirecard, which became insolvent and collapsed in 2020. Marsalek was responsible for Wirecard's business, etc. So here you can read about the MiG company of Zurich. It looks quite big, international. I mean, Zurich is it's the financial capital of Europe. Second is Frankfurt, of course. So, and here, by the way, you can read about Jan Marsalek. They even talk about a false identity, Nelidov, some Russian identity. Yeah, well, they want us all to believe that Russia is in it. It's just too thick. Only Rus doesn't buy it. It's like chess. You have to think into the deep. You have to think like 10 moves ahead. And this is too simplistic. It really smells Swissy all over. It's too simplistic. It's too thick, you know. It's not really... Nah, I don't buy it. A possible way to steal money is to exchange the money like into something lighter, like diamonds, and then take the Swiss Megflug and fly wherever you want. Especially with Zurich being that finance capital of Europe. Always look at the symbols because they don't lie. In 1872, the Zurich Insurance Company with that Z logo was founded. And barely a few years later, Lenin was in Zurich, who brought the actual still existing Z system to Russia, as it is still the red vertical rule Lenin system ruling Russia today, with red Soviet stars and Z symbols from Lenin's time in Zurich. And now we have that Swiss senator, also from Zurich, allegedly conspiring with the Ruskies. And Jan Marsalek, flying with a MiG, also from Zurich to Russia. Insurance companies like the Swiss Z company are like banks and they finance stuff. So on the right side, under the Z, it says something in Russian. And it says, "We don't abandon our own." Now, who do you think they mean with that? Well, I already told you so. This war, this internal war, all wars are about the internal war, Pharaoh's nobility, in between the vertical and the horizontal rule. So the West, they want to bring the horizontal rule to Germany, to Russia, as they already brought it to Germany. And the Russian masters, they don't want it. So they want to keep the vertical rule of the Tsars and of Lenin, who was of the nobility. And this is why it says, "We don't abandon our own." Our own, it's like we, from Pharaoh's original Red House nobility. We don't abandon our own, and we don't abandon our own ideas. In 1903, Lenin was already in Geneva, Switzerland. That is only a few years after the Swiss Z company was founded. And now we see all those same symbols popping up again, which is not a coincidence, because symbols don't do coincidences, and neither do our masters with Pharaoh's neutral base in the Alps. So here it says in the AI, I read it for you on the top. Zurich is not Europe's biggest financial center. Well, I wasn't far off. London holds the top spot, both in Europe and globally alongside New York. Zurich is widely recognized as Europe's second most important financial center and typically ranks within the top 10 global financial hubs. And well, you can read it yourselves. It's of course the US, the Swiss UBS bank is the biggest bank in the world. It says headquarters. It hosts the headquarters of global financial heavyweights like UBS Bank, the biggest in the world, and major insurers like the Swiss Re and the Zurich Insurance Group. There you go. The Z company. When Lenin was in Zurich. So here is the Swiss Z company, and you see the company was founded in 1872. A few years later, 1903, Lenin was in Geneva and later on in Zurich. And it was founded, it was together, it says here, with the Schweizerischen Kreditanstalt. It's at the top on the right-hand side. And that's the bank that later on became the Credit Suisse, with a lot of scandals around it. And the Schweizerische Kreditanstalt, they had a logo which was almost a swastika. Until somewhere in the late 90s, I think they changed it. Because after all, it was a bit obvious. Here you see about the controversies. There were a lot of litigations going on, especially with America. You can see there they had to pay like $171 million and many more times. And that's, that's just the tip of the iceberg, of course. And here you can read about the Z symbol of the Ruskies, and they call it, probably the Ukrainians, they call it the swastika. Not a swastika, but a swastika, like here in black at the top. And this is what I wanted to show you, so yeah. On the right-hand side at the bottom, it says, it means we don't abandon our own. And there's a lot of red involved. You see also the letter Z in red, and it's together with a lot of times with the Soviet Red Star, as I've shown you before. So, abandoning our own, it's about the vertical red house of Pharaoh, who were, of course, the original Tsars. There was a vertical rule. And Lenin made his counter-revolution and brought it back. And now we're still in the same system. That's why they still honor Lenin. The logic, or rather dislogic, behind Marsalek's Zurich, Russia flight in a Russian MiG is, if Marsalek would have really been a Russian spy preparing the heist of the century and then escaped to Russia, he would never have attracted anything Russian in the denominator, like openly flying around in Rusky fighter jets. But on the contrary, anyone else wanting everyone to believe that the Ruskies were behind the Wirecard heist would do so. And as Mig Flug are in Zürich, Switzerland, the presumed Swiss mastermind behind the heist just chose a cheap next-door solution, as if a money-hungry businessman like Marsalek had a mindset opening up for adventure flights in Russian fighter jets made in Switzerland. No way, that just doesn't fit into the narrative. It is like someone wants to make us believe that Marsalek went to Russia, which they really laid down in front of us, very thickly, very desperately thick, way too thick. Usually, financial crime is known to be the most sophisticated amongst all crimes. And on more than one occasion in history, the Swissies have shown the world to be true masters in financial crime and concealing it under their proverbial and literal mountain of neutrality. The Swiss neutrality mountain, blocking all view and no transparency whatsoever. Of course, elaborated financial crime of 2 billion Wirecard euros involves the laying of false tracks and false scents to mislead the tracker dogs, like taking MiG flights from Zurich to Moscow in Russian fighter jets. Thus, Swissy allegedly thinking to put the Keystone Cops and their Keystone Dogs off track. But here comes homie Ross, Swissy, and I've got your smell deep in my nostrils for more than 30 years now. So you can't put this homie dog off trail anymore. Any financial criminal from the motherland of all financial crime knows, of course, that in the West, Russia is considered to be the land of all evil, that momentarily can be blamed for about anything, with a reasonably big chance to be accepted by everyone, including huge financial crime being attributed to the new scapegoat Russia, leading the scent away from the real perpetrators of the Wirecard heist. Very practical indeed. Maybe that's why Jan Marsalek showed up in 2018 at the Karin Knassel wedding in Austria, that was also attended by Liliputin himself. Probably all part of the false track Russia scapegoat strategy of the forthcoming Wirecard heist 2 years after that. So here you can see him standing, taking a picture with a cell phone, standing behind Karin Knazel. And look at the ears, and compare his ears to the guy, Jan Marsalek, to the right. So allegedly, the guy taking the picture there at Karin Knazel's wedding is allegedly Jan Marsalek. There was also a second Austrian involved in the Wirecard robbery, and his name is Markus Braun, who has been imprisoned for the last 6 years now, and who might be innocent. In order to have an idea how much 2 billion euros is worth while staying in Zurich's Megflug Aeronautics, a French Rafale fighter jet costs about 120 million euros. So with 2 billion euros, one can buy a huge fleet of 18 French Rafale fighter jets and modernize one's air force, which the Swiss could in fact do and did on September 2020, right after the heist of the century, only in the end buying American instead of French airplanes, because Swissy doesn't like the EU, European Union, very much. What I see here is like the typical bank robber buy 2 Ferrari sports cars after a huge bank job, openly giving away all obvious indications of the whodunit scheme. And I know, having been in SwiSSyland since the mid-1990s until 2015, that the Swissies have been arguing for more than 20 years which fighter jet to choose, but never had enough money. Suddenly, 3 months after the heist of the century, suddenly were able to purchase a whole bunch of American F-35 fighter jets. Wirecard, after the theft of 2 billion euros, went officially broke in June 2020. And immediately after, in September of 2020, the Swiss voted to finally buy the US F-35 fighter jets after having been financially unable to do so for about 20 years. So here you can see this, the key on Wirecard, the key events of June 2020. On June 18th, the 2 billion euros were missing. And then here on June 25th, 2020, Wirecard officially filed for insolvency in Munich, citing impending bankruptcy and massive debt. So that was the end of June 2020. Let's say July, makes it easier counting. So here it says on September 27, 2020, that's barely 3 months after the Wirecard heist, the Swiss voters narrowly approved a 6 billion Swiss franc budget to purchase the new fighter jet. That's the Lockheed Martin F-35A. So, well, you might say 2 billion is not 6 billion for the F-35. But I showed you in the beginning that about 22 billion euros were lost due to the Wirecard heist of people losing a lot of money on the stock exchange and all sort of these things. So money doesn't get lost. It's like energy. Energy goes somewhere else. It gets transformed into something else, or it ends up in somebody else's pocket. Well, I know whose pocket that was, eh? It's so obvious, you know. It's like a bank robber, you know, buying a couple of Ferraris after a bank job, you know, because you just can't keep it in his pocket, like. Or there was this famous American spy who got a lot of money from the Russians, and he was, for his wife, he was buying houses and, you know, like 10 times his salary, which couldn't be his CIA salary, and this is how they caught them. But they never catch the Swiss. Can't do that way. Never, because it's neutral. It's the whole setup. It's a neutral country. They can do whatever they want. It's like a diplomatic immunity. So here you can read it. I'll read it for you. Wirecard suffered catastrophic financial losses totaling roughly $20 billion to $31 billion in overall economic and market damage. This is what it is, the market damage. If you have a company and suddenly 2 billion are losing, and the shareholders, you know, they're losing their money, then all the other customers, they don't want to do their business there anymore. So this is how the losses get bigger. So the ones who did the heist, they knew it, so they could skim this off. You know, not only steal $2 billion, but skim off. It's like with the milk, you know, to take the cream of the milk, to skim it off. You get another 31 billion, you know. You can easily buy a couple of F-35s for that, eh? Finally, after 20 years. Well, that took a long time, didn't it? So you can read the rest yourself, you know. If you can, if you know what's happening, you know, then you can even earn a lot more. It was the same with that battle with the Rothschild, the famous thing, you know. Napoleon lost the battle. And then quickly, some of the, allegedly, some of the Rothschild bankers, they went to the British Stock Exchange before it was known that the battle was won by the English, and they allegedly earned a lot of money. If you know what's going on, you know, who will win, where the heist is going to, then the money you can earn, you know, is even, it's like thousandfold. You know, the same thing sort of happened on, what was it, Black Thursday in 1929, the Wall Street crash and all these sort of things, you know. Russia has nothing to do with it and is being played. Russia is the victim of the Swiss aggressors, just as in 1917, with Swiss agent Lenin from Zurich, Swiss agent Adolf, also from Zurich, 1923. And Marsalek is not in Russia. Also, the pictures they spread of Jan Marsalek in a Russian uniform fighting against the Ukraine are cheap efforts to lay false tracks into this false Russian narrative. The uniform is way too clean and new for some frontline outfit. And no top league businessman like Marsalek, who had just made 2 billion, would go risk his neck in any war, granting the option of dying and never be able to spend a single dollar of his new 2 billion fortune. Here we see Jan Marsalek with his charming Swiss travel suitcase with 2 billion euros, taking his MiG flight in a Russian fighter jet from Zurich to Moscow, then speeds to the Ukraine war, finds himself a mirror at the front lines, put on a clean Rusky uniform, fits the clean shoes, and takes a selfie for the media, taken and presented by the man himself. Oh boy, do we love fairy tales. Aye, Swissy. It's all Sound of Music all over again, with the Trapp family and the world being trapped. You all see the huge obelisk with the Horus 101 sun hieroglyph on it in the corner. As usual, we're being misled by the media, who in turn are being fed with deliberate disinformation to sidetrack us all. To the right, we can see the Austrian flag. Marsalek is Austrian, and not the first time the Swissies use an Austrian to destroy Germany. So the Swiss banks and other Swiss financial institutions can enrich themselves, which we've seen happening before. And history is always repeating itself, especially since every time things are turning out so well. And yes, Wirecard was a German company wrecked by an Austrian and allegedly planned by the Swissies, just as Adolf was. Here in this picture from the war, you can see on the left-hand side the Germans, and on the right side you see the Swiss. At the border, you see the border in the middle. And, you know, they're both speaking German, and they're both smiling here. I used to have a helmet like you see on the right side, the Swiss helmet. I bought it, I paid money for it, but the Swiss stole it off me, as they stole everything off me. So you see them all smiling here. And the Germans mistakenly always think that the Swiss are a harmless brother people because of the shared German language, linguistically speaking. Therefore, the Germans always get ribbed by their alleged brother people, whom they call das Brudervolk. Therefore, the Germans never saw it coming, and never saw it going either. Up to this day, nobody knows where the heist money of the Wirecard heist went to. So we see in the Wirecard affair the same players as those leading to World War II, with the Austrian agent Marsalek instead of Austrian agent Adolf, finance out of Switzerland, the Russia distraction, and Germany attacked. Exactly the same. It's history repeating itself. Now, what would Swissy's motive be to allegedly attack Germany? Well, by attacking the German Wirecard, automatically the EU, European Union, gets attacked, which is exactly the aim of the Swissies, which they show themselves everywhere, on posters, in the streets, in the media, in newspapers, on television, about how they are so afraid of the EU. Well, they're practically giving and presenting us the motive of their deeds. It's all there. And, well, what does a human do when he's afraid of something? Well, he seeks to destroy the danger, in this case the EU, and blow it all up. What Swissy is actually showing here in this picture on the right-hand side, what they show all over in their streets, in the media. This is a Swiss-made poster. And it's commonly known that fear is the mother of all violence. It is unbelievable to see how the whole world let these gangsters of the Alps do whatever they want, which can only be understood that SwiSSyland is Pharaoh's neutral base, untouchable by any nation in the entire world. They are the true untouchables.
Die Schweiz, das Land der Pharaonen, wo fette Säcke auf ihrem Reichtum thronen. Sitzen sie mit ihrem ranzigen Arsch und den Arsch auf ihrem Geld, finanzieren Kriege rund um die Welt. Der Name Schweiz bedeutet Schwester der ISIS. Da werden dann die Zusammenhänge ziemlich klar. Dort gibt es mehr Pyramiden und Obelisken als im Stammland Ägypten. Das ist einfach wunderbar. Nicht nur Cola wurde dort erfunden, von den Reichen hat sich noch keiner geschunden. So wie ihr System, Sklaven sich für sie, Ausbeutung überteuerter Firlefanz enden nie. Die Bank für internationalen Zahlungsausgleich steht in Basel, aber nur geografisch, mit 18 Stockwerken, nur psychisch. Sie ist vor Steuerabgaben und Strafverfolgung befreit, vollkommen immun. Eine Phantombank nicht überprüfbar, was immer sie auch tun. Aus den Unterkiefern kistenweise angeliefert, der von den Nazis getöteten brachen sie die Goldzähne, aber aus billiges Gold. Ein Menschenleben ist nichts wert, sondern der Reichtum seinen Lauf. Jo holli du, jo holdi, Waldfee, Hollero, Heidi, wann kommst in die Berge zurück? Jo hudel det ut. Brüllt der Alpenjodler ab von der Felswand, die Dirna fesch in der Alpentracht, von den Nazis erfunden, der eine die lacht. Und unter die Schweizer Alpenidyll, in den Katakomben des Geldes, wo es ist finster und kühl, bleibt in den Augen dieser alten. In den Bergen, da ist es so still, drum hockt man da unten im Tresor der Moschee. Sonnensymbol auf jedem Haus, Freimaurer-Ästhetik, es ist ein Graus. Hier gehen die Pharaonen ein und aus Aus jedem Fenster stiert die Gier heraus. Jo holli dü, jo holli jo, schön Eis in der Schwitz, drum bleib mal du. Wir haben uns bereits seit Generationen mit den Einheimischen genetisch vermischt und vermengt. Ihr kriegt uns hier niemals wieder raus, wir haben euch genetisch beengt. Wir leben hier im Saus und Braus und ziehen aus unseren Filmen niemals wieder aus. Es lebe die Knechtschaft und das Bürgertum. Wegen einem Anunnaki dreht sich hier niemand um. Ach Mädel, heirate doch einen Langschädel, dann bist du aus dem Schneider, solange du lebst. Mit Geld im Überfluss hast du niemals wieder einen Verdruss. Du musst nur tun, was deine Herren dir befehlen. Die feinen Herren, die ehrliche Bürger betrügen und bestehlen. Jo holli du, jo holli do, hier ist so schön, drum bleib mal du. Ja, in den Bergen, da ist es so schön, drum huck mal down den Tresor der Moschee. Sonnensymbol auf jedem Haus, Freimaurerästhetik, es ist ein Graus. Hier gehen die Pharaonen ein und aus jedem Fenster stiert die Gier heraus. Jo holli du, jo holli jo, sche Eis in der Schwitz, drum bleib mal du. Wir haben uns bereits seit Generationen mit den Einheimischen genetisch vermischt und vermengt. Ihr kriegt uns hier niemals wieder raus, wir haben euch genetisch beengt. Wir leben hier im Saus und Braus, ziehen aus unserem Film niemals wieder